We are also going to hear tomorrow from the gas, what is it? Kimberly Swati. Is that key? Municipal utilities. We're trying to get an overview for people of what the status of this gas situation is, particularly for some of these communities that are hard hit. And then, so that is tomorrow. But today, we have a presentation on the state of the electric cooperatives, and anybody who's watching in online or listening in online, you can go on to kansaslegislature.org, go to Committees tab, select Standing, select Senate, then look for Utilities, and go to the committee testimony, click in the date box, and the little date, today's date should be highlighted. Click on that, and you'll be able to see the same thing that the committee is seeing in PDFs. So with that, I think we're going to turn the floor over to Leslie Kaufman first, the Vice President of Governmental Relations and Legal Counsel for Kansas Electric Cooperatives. Leslie?
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman, Ranking Member Peterson, Ranking Member Francisco, and Vice Chair Peterson. Thank you for the opportunity to be here. We have had this scheduled and on the calendar, at least with the chairman, for a few weeks. So this was actually scheduled before the weather incidences of last week. And I know a lot of you are probably, have a lot of questions related to the weather events from last week. And I will tell you that our members are still working through a lot of that. Settlements haven't come in completely yet. And so although we don't know the full impacts, and we're not going to speculate on what ifs, but our members are committed to working with their member owners as we go through this, keeping them informed and looking for opportunities to work with them over time to address whatever may be coming down the pike. With that, though, I think the information that we'll be sharing today will help really set a good context for what we may be talking about later, and we certainly would be willing to come back if you ever desire, Chairman, as some more of this information comes in. So we hope today's briefing will be informational, and I think that what we will impart about the cooperative structure will give you a better understanding of how our members operate, how KEC operates, and then as we have those later discussions, I think that will be a good framework and a good context for kind of filtering all that through. So as the chairman said, I am Leslie Kaufman. I am the Vice President of Government Relations and Legal Counsel with Kansas Electric Cooperatives, Inc. And we do thank you for the opportunity to be here with you today and provide a little more information about our association and our members. With us today, we have Connie Adams from Sumner County Electric. Connie's going to share with us after I present, and then hopefully all of the technology has worked, and we will have Stuart Lowry on by a WebEx connection, I believe, for possible question and answer later on. Stuart is the president and CEO of one of our generation and transmission co-ops, Sunflower Electric, headquartered in Hayes. KEC is the statewide association for 27 electric distribution cooperatives and 3 generation and transmission cooperatives. We were formed in 1941 and we're headquartered in Topeka. And so for 80 years, we have been providing services to and programming for the electric cooperatives in the areas of advocacy, communications, education, and have a whole slate of programming that we offer in support of cooperatives. We have 2 staff members that you will see regularly here in the State House. Doug Shepard is in the audience with me today, and then myself. And then KEC also has contract lobbyist support from Divine, Donley, and Murray. We also have 3 of our members that have a presence in the Capitol on a daily basis, either through staff lobbyists, contract lobbyists, or a combination of both. Kansas Electric Power Cooperatives, Phil Wages, and Phil's in the audience today with us as well. And then Sunflower Electric, Claire Guston, and they contract with Capital Strategies, and Midwest Energy, they contract with DDM, and then occasionally one of their staffers, Mike Morley, will be in the building building as well. So we are always here and we're always around to be a resource for you should you need. KEC is organized as a member-owned cooperative, and our members are member-owned electric cooperatives. All cooperatives are governed by the individual trustees that represent their own consumer members, and our generation and transmission co-ops provide wholesale power to the distribution cooperatives who then deliver it to the end consumer member. There are two generation and transmission co-ops headquartered in Kansas, that being Sunflower Electric and KEPCO. Each is owned by the distribution cooperatives that they serve. These two GNTs are also members of KEC, and with that, we then, between the GNTs and KEC, serve a common membership of distribution co-ops. Again, these 27 co-ops deliver safe, reliable, and affordable electricity service to nearly 300,000 homes and businesses and institutions. And the transmission and distribution network that we have built out over the state covers over 80,000 miles in 103 of our 105 counties, and that covers about 80% of the land mass in Kansas. Member control is a foundation of the cooperative business model, and co-op governance is really a central core of what makes co-ops different, and our governance structure is founded in democratic principles. By statute and by custom, each member has one vote, placing everyone on equal footing regardless of the amount of energy they use. Members enact bylaws that govern the relationship between the co-op and its members. The members, through these bylaws, can determine whether they elect boards trustees from districts or at large, how many trustees, although there is a statutory minimum of 5, and then the qualifications that a trustee has to have for their particular cooperative. Some co-op bylaws do enact residency requirements for trustees, but that's similar to the residency requirements of elected officials, and it recognizes that one's connection to their local community is different if you live in that community on a daily basis versus whether you just commute in to operate a business or to perform a job. Kansas law requires that all co-op board members, electric co-op board members, be members of the cooperative. And so for voting membership, we don't have any outside directors. And the qualifications beyond that may be in place under cooperative bylaws reflect the values of the consumer members for which are served by those cooperatives. Kansas law allows cooperative members to elect to self-regulate their rates, and all electric co-ops in Kansas have done so. The member-elected trustees approve the cooperative rate charges, but such action is done in an open meeting, and that meeting's open to all members. The ability to self-govern is a critical structural element of the cooperative business model. It lies at the heart of what it means to be a democratically controlled cooperative, and protecting that right is a central tenet in our advocacy program. Co-op members always have a voice in their governance. This can take many forms, including electing their board members, completing member satisfaction surveys, participating at cooperative meetings, and running for the cooperative board positions themselves. And really, really importantly, cooperative board members as community leaders and as community members are very, very accessible to the other members whom they represent. They're the individuals that you run across at the grocery store or at the gas station, or you sit in a sporting event or school activity with them, or maybe even worship in the same location with them. And so we think that is a unique perspective that member controlled, member elected trustees bring to the business model. Members may petition, though, the KCC on a rate issue if they do not believe that they are being heard. There is an ability within 1 year of a rate change to petition the KCC for review. In the nearly 30 years that our deregulation statute, or the self-regulation statute as we call it sometimes too, has been in place, there's not been a single cooperative whose rates have been determined by the KCC to be unjust or unreasonable or unduly discriminatory. And we think that that is a real hallmark. We think it's a time-tested model, and that we feel like it's validation that our self-regulation process works. In fact, you've heard a lot about the Senate Bill 69 study, and that's been referenced a lot. But in the LEI portion of that study, one of the charges was to look at our governance model and our rate-making model within self-governance, and to look at that and see if it was in the public interest. And the LEI study concluded that yes, it was. It says the ownership nature in terms of being owned by the very customers they serve is conducive to promoting the public interest, and thus LEI can conclude that there are sufficient organizational and economic incentives for co-ops to set rates in a way that prioritizes the public interest. And inherent in that is that we are not-for-profit utilities that seek to carry out our businesses on a cost of service basis. And when we have margin at the end, that's allocated back to the members through a capital credit that we carry, and then is revolved out over time. So one of the things, though, that does impact what our rates are in the cooperative system and has a huge impact is density, population density. We serve in areas where we have far more cattle than people, and we have miles between customers sometimes. So just like for many of you, the population density in your legislative district determines how you campaign, whether if you're able to go door to door in your district, or whether if you have to drive several miles or between your constituents. That's all a relational issue based on line density, and the same things impact us on the co-op side. And for co-ops, our average line density through our systems range from about 1.8 customers per mile to a high of 7.1 per mile. In comparison, a municipal average is going to be probably 40 to 50 per mile, and an investor-owned will probably see 25 to 30. So that makes a huge difference. But with looking at that, though, the LEI study commented on that as well, and they said higher electric rates do not necessarily reflect inefficiencies or effectiveness of the rate-making process of cooperatives. Co-ops exist to bring electricity to rural areas where IOUs were reluctant to serve, and in general, these areas have a lower number of customers per area or customer density, and that means that more infrastructure investments are needed to reach load centers, and we have less people to spread that over then. So, you know, it's still possible out in our rural areas to talk to people that remember when the lights came on. A lot of the rural electrification happened in the 30s and 40s, and we know that it changed lives. We have those stories recorded. We have people that we can still visit with and hear them recount the day that they were able to walk home and flip a light switch. It changed their lives. It enhanced their safety. It brought them new economic opportunities out in rural Kansas and set them on par with their urban and neighbors. And it powered their dreams. And it's critically important that the state not embark on any structural changes that make it more expensive to serve those members. Concern for community is one of the hallmarks of the cooperative business model. It's one of the tenets of the international cooperative movement, and it drives a lot of the work that we do to benefit the areas we serve. And that's a real hallmark of how we can be an integral partner in economic development with our communities. We're examining innovative ways to advance broadband build-out, whether that be individually or alongside other rural providers. Broadband, as you've heard, is an expensive endeavor, and it's one that where public and private initiatives and that partnering really can have a beneficial outcome. Cooperatives have been and continue to be at the forefront of meeting some of their communities and the state's biggest challenges. And daily, we demonstrate the power of working together to accomplish more than what one can do individually. KEC and our member cooperatives will continue to work for sound public policy objectives that better the lives of our members and improve the communities in which we serve. And we look forward to partnering with you all and the rest of the legislature on issues that are important to electric cooperatives. We have had some big issues here in the past few years, and those that have served in the Senate and the House have been very, very instrumental in moving some key policy objectives for the rural utilities, electric utilities. And for those of you that have been serving for a few years and have been part of that, we certainly appreciate that. As I noted, community outreach, economic development outreach is kind of a hallmark, and we are privileged that Connie Adams, the CEO from Sumner County Electric Cooperative, is here with us today. And if it's okay with you, Chairman, I would just have Connie come up and talk about some of the ways that her co-op has been working with their local community on economic development issues. So thank you.
That sounds good, Leslie, and then we'll open it up to questions for the committee. Connie? And please introduce yourself so folks at home can, or who are listening in, know who you are.
Thank you. Chairman Thompson, Vice Chair Peterson, and Ranking Member Francisco, thank you for allowing me to come speak today on behalf of electric cooperatives in the state of Kansas. My name is Connie Adams, and I'm the CEO of Sumner County Electric Cooperative in Wellington, Kansas. I've just been the CEO of Sumner County for a little over a year, but I've been employed by Sumner County Electric for 21 years and have been working with our communities with economic development and different civic organizations for the past 7 years. I sit as a board of director on the Economic Development Corporation for Sumner County. Like all cooperatives in Kansas, Sumner County is member-controlled and member-owned. We serve about 3,500 consumer members, which equates to about 4,500 meters in 5 counties in the state of Kansas. We serve a little bit of Sedgwick County, Sumner County, most portions of Cowley County, Harper County, and Kingman County. Commitment to community is a guiding principle that the international cooperative movement and one rural electric cooperative like ours very strongly value. Across the state, local cooperatives are working with community partners and other co-ops and their generation and transmission cooperatives to support local infrastructure projects and attract or sustain services in rural areas. I would like to share my experience that my cooperative has recently been working on with the city of Wellington in Sumner County, Kansas. Rural cooperatives have access to the Red Leg Loan Program and grants. So what the Red Leg program is a zero interest loan that can be taken out for a period of time that will sustain jobs in the community or keeping services available in the community that may go unfunded and lost. Healthcare in Wellington, Kansas, and in Sumner County dramatically changed March 12, 2020, when our hospital closed dramatically. There was no warning for this to happen. And not only was it that we were losing our hospital in our community, we were losing it in the middle of a pandemic. The hospital had roots in Wellington and had been in existence for well over 100 years and was one of the town's largest employers. With its closures, the city of Wellington residents and the communities around us found that our health care or any type of emergency health care was over 30 miles away. That was disturbing, and shortly after the closure, Ascension Via Christi engaged with the city of Wellington and the Healthcare Authority Board for the hospital, and they went to start exploring reopening the emergency department to sustain critical health care in the community. KEPCO's Phil Wages worked hand in hand with myself and City Manager Shane Shields with the City of Wellington and the Healthcare Authority to draft a USDA Red Leg application to fund a portion of the $1.8 million project. The loan was approved in August, and we were elated, to say the least, because that was going to once again allow us to have that emergency service in our county and in the City of Wellington. I was born and raised in Wellington, Kansas. I've raised my children there. My parents still live there today, and the thought of not having access to health care is very disturbing, to say the least. So if this is something that we as a cooperative can reach out and be a small part of funding to allow that critical service to be there, we were ready to step up and do that. But the thing that's the most important about it is not only were we ready to step up and do that for our community, we did that without it even having impact on us. Sumner County Electric does not serve that hospital. We will never serve a kilowatt hour to that hospital at all. We wanted to be part of this program and part of bringing this back for the sense of community, for the sense of service for the residents, and to provide that service for our county and for our community. It had absolutely nothing to do with the sale of a kilowatt hour. It had all to do with providing a service in a community that we are rooted in deeply and we are corporate citizens of and love to be part of that city. I could list numerous other red leg programs across the state, like plumbing upgrades that kept an elementary school open in Osborne. Prairie Land Electric Cooperative, headquartered in Norton, has provided USDA funding for the county hospital expansions in Norton and Phillips counties, totaling $850,000, which leveraged another $3.75 million in funding. Prairie Land has used their revolving loan, which is the grant side of the USDA program, to support projects such as a CT scanner and endoscope for the Sheridan County Hospital, new building for the Norton County Emergency Management Service, fire trucks for Smith and Phillip counties, and a new community building for the city of Almena, totaling more than $1.5 million. This is just a few of the many projects across the state that demonstrate cooperative commitment to the communities that we serve and the ability to partner with local stakeholders to make a positive difference in rural Kansas. If you have questions about these programs, Phil Wages with KEPCO, whom, like I stated, worked hand in hand. He's what we call the red leg guru, but he worked hand in hand with us to put this together and guide us through that. The red leg program is something that our cooperative had participated with in the past, but not since my tenure. And so he, walked us through all of the ins and outs of it and helped with the paperwork on it and working with Travis Snyder with USDA. And we made it happen, and we couldn't be more grateful for Phil's position in that as well. From our perspective, Sumner County Electric will continue to look for ways that we can interject ourselves into the communities that we serve. We will look for different ways that we can partner with other cooperatives, whether they be electric cooperatives or telephone cooperatives, and working with the city municipality who, from time to time is an issue for us, but we've bridged that and we have made that commitment to make our communities better. So I thank you for allowing me to come speak to you today, and if there's any questions, I'd be glad to stand for those as well.
Thank you, Connie. I will open it up for questions from the committee. Senator Hawk.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have a question, I think, for Leslie, and it may spill over to you, Connie, but on the Southwest Power Pool, how do the electric co-ops interface with SPP? Is it the same with the G&Ts, the KEPCO and Sunflower? And how is it the same or different with the IOUs?
Sure. Primarily it's going to be working through our generation and transmission co-ops and then down to their individual distribution cooperative members. As you know, all of our members would be connected into the Southwest Power Pool because it serves all of Kansas. I do know that, did we get Stuart on the WebEx?
Yes.
If the chairman is amenable.
Yeah, Stuart can answer that.
Stuart would be the better one to answer that. If not, we'll field it here in the room. But if he's available.
Good
Stuart,
afternoon.
if you're online, yes, there you go.
Okay, good. You're hearing me. Thanks for letting me participate remotely. Enjoyed the presentations and appreciate the opportunity to speak to you. Sunflower and KEPCO and their members, and also Midwest Energy, and even the unaffiliated cooperatives in Kansas that take wholesale service from Evergy are in one way or another participating in the Southwest Power Pool. For Sunflower's from Sunflower's perspective, and the same is true of KEPCO, all of our load is in the Southwest Power Pool integrated market. We are also a transmission owner in the SPP, and so all of our transmission planning functions go through the SPP planning processes as well.
Senator Hawk, any other questions? Senator Fagg.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I was wondering, Connie, how many actual red loans do you have? You serve 5 counties. How many loans do you have in that area?
We currently have the one Red Leg loan in Sumner County right now. The previous one that we had was in Cowley County for the cotton gin over in the Winfield area.
Yeah, okay. Thank you.
Does the KCC review all of your rate increase requests, or does the co-op members ask for those? How does that work?
Sure. All of our members have opted for self-regulation, and so that places the rate-making authority in the co-op under the auspices of their member-elected boards. They still, employ processes to identify, where, look at cost of service surveys, look at cost causer divisions, and do a lot of the same processes that they would had they been regulated. And because we could find ourselves before the KCC under a petition process. Within a year of a rate change, and those rate changes are approved by the elected boards in an open meeting where the members are welcome to attend, and often following a lot of public outreach of various types. Within a year of that rate change, it doesn't necessarily mean it's an increase. It might be a decrease, or it might be reshuffling because of a change in load profile. But members have the right to petition the KCC for review for 12 months after that time. And as I noted earlier, we haven't had any instance where the rates have been found to be out of line. And in that time, too, I believe there's only been 2 cases that have even gone up. One, I believe, was dismissed on procedural grounds, and Doug can correct me if I'm wrong. But one was, adjudicated, for lack of a better word, at the commission, and our rates were found reasonable.
I have another follow-up question, and it has to do with this recent cold snap. Were the co-ops hit? What was the impact? What do you anticipate going forward, for those folks out there on the co-ops? How will that affect their electrical prices?
Yeah, gladly. And just to, I think Connie mentioned but if I can make one clarification. In all of the Red Leg programming and the loan grant programming, that's something that comes through the co-ops and is outside their rate structure. So although the communities are benefiting from that and the co-op's able to pull that down, it's not going into customer bills, and it's not figuring into rates. So we just wanted to circle back on that. In answer to your question, yes, cooperatives were impacted. We do know that it's going to be a little bit of time before we know the full impact, and I certainly, if you would like, I think that Stuart can offer some insight on the G&T level. Connie, from a distribution cooperatives perspective, will probably have some things that she may be willing to share. But we know that it's going to be a little bit of time because those settlements are still coming in, and would certainly, if you're willing, Chairman, refer you to Stuart again, and then Connie.
Yeah, Stuart, if you could, and identify yourself first so people know who's talking.
Stuart. Thank you, Stuart Lowry, Sunflower Electric Power Corporation. Yes, the electric cooperatives were impacted by last week's event, and I'll give you a couple of different perspectives. From an operational perspective, you probably heard that the Southwest Power Pool implemented an Energy Emergency 3. They were actually at various levels at different times in the week, but there was actual load shedding that occurred during the emergency event when it was clear that there was an imbalance between the load and the generation that was available to serve that load. And so that's one of the functions as a consolidated balancing authority that the SPP plays for the utilities in Kansas. They actually give us, the transmission owners, directives to shed load in a specified amount. In our case, last week, I think we had 2 separate directives to shed 30 megawatts of load. in advance of this event, we had already worked with our members years previous to establish load shedding blocks. And those blocks are just groups of customers that make up an aggregate size, say 5 megawatts a block. And when we get the directive from SPP, we as the transmission owner implement the load shedding procedures to reduce the load on the overall system. The directive that we get at Sunflower would be proportional to, say, what Evergy would get at their office and all of the other utilities in the region. Everyone is expected to be impacted proportionately when load shed events are implemented. And fortunately, last week, I think we had a total of 4.5, 5 hours of load shed. The success of that is that we protected the grid from greater issues, and that's what it's meant to do. We were able to come out of the energy emergency relatively quickly, but we did have customers without power for, that 4 or 5 hour period on a 30 to 60 minute basis. So from an operational perspective, that was a big part of the event. Now, from a cost perspective, as Leslie said, SPP also administers an energy market for the entire region. The basic premise behind the energy market is the cheapest generation runs in rank order from cheapest to most expensive while maintaining reliable service. And from an energy market perspective, there are a lot of things that can impact the costs. And last week, we saw not only in the SPP region, but also in Texas and one of the other energy markets, there were some pretty significant price excursions where prices got incredibly high. And so the market has to settle, and the buyers and the sellers essentially have to square up their transactions so that people get paid appropriately. Those settlements have been delayed, I think, because of the consequential events of last week. And so because the markets haven't settled yet, we don't have a clear idea on what the cost implications truly are. We know that they're going to be big. And so our members, the 6 Sunflower members, are concerned. I know the people that those 6 members serve are also concerned, as you all are very concerned. And our commitment has been, as soon as we know what the cost implications are, we're going to share that with the public. And we're also making a commitment that we're not going to be unloading exorbitant costs onto the ratepayer all at once. Once we understand the extent of the financial implications, we're going to work with our members to try to figure out a way to smooth the effects of this event over time.
Frank has a question?
Leslie, I was wondering, broadband is on everybody's mind. Is there anybody that could kind of talk about where broadband fits? And do you have any shovel-ready projects out there, in case federal government decides to throw some money at us? I hear shovel-ready that says sometimes being proactive with that, you kind of jump on them. I just wondered if you could talk a little bit on that.
Certainly. We actually have 2 electric co-ops right now that are actually providing broadband service. Wheatland Electric, which is headquartered out in Garden City, and then down in your area, Senator Butler Rural Electric with their Velocity branch is providing service on the broadband side. I would be glad to speak, but Chairman Thompson, one of our staffers, Doug Shepard, actually sat on the broadband task force. If we'd like to hear from Doug directly, he is here. He's our Vice President of Management Consulting Services, and he sat on the broadband task force that was meeting a couple years ago. So,
Sure, Doug, come on up.
Thank you, Chair Thompson. Doug Shepard with Kansas Electric Cooperatives. So yeah, I appreciate the question. The topic of broadband comes up frequently. Besides the 2 that are actively in the business, we've got a couple others that are exploring the idea, and they were interested in applying for some of the funds that were available in the Spark task force, or Spark funds that were available. but right now I'm not aware of any shovel-ready projects that are ready to go. I think what they're finding is, just like with electricity, that the cost to serve these low-density areas make it very hard to do that. So I think mostly what you're going to see with cooperatives, Butler down in around El Dorado serves a larger or a higher densely populated area. And so the business case was much easier for them than some of these that serve the population densities out west. And so probably what we're going to see is they're talking with other telephone or telecommunication providers that might be able to partner with. That makes sense that they're serving common memberships. The cooperatives have some facilities in place in terms of poles and infrastructure that can be dual purposed. But I'm not aware of, right now that we're going to see somebody at one of the co-ops directly getting involved. But the long and the short of it, it's likely going to take public money as opposed to private investment for those low density areas.
Quick question. Do you see any, obviously, technology changes and maybe even the type of delivery system for broadband might change over the next, who knows, 3, 4, 5 years. Is that a concern? You don't want to run a whole bunch of line out there and then have to swap it out 4 or 5 years from now.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, that's really, that is, you hit the nail on the head there, that with electricity, we used public funds to serve those rural areas, but the electric infrastructure has been largely unchanged for 80-some years. But with broadband, the technology changes quickly. So the business case really needs to be there and not on a long time horizon, but that's something that they can make sure that they can make a case in a shorter term because of the change in technology.
Thank you, Doug. I appreciate it. One more. I have another question for Stuart Lowry. Stuart, with regard, you talking about the load shedding during the course of this event. When you get the call from the SPP to shed load, do you have local or regional dispatchers that take care of that, or do they do that from the SPC or SPP?
Yeah, so the balancing of the entire region is done by the SPP in terms of matching load to generation. The directive to shed load comes from the SPP based on their overview of the entire regional grid. But actually opening the breaker and shedding the load is done by our system control at Sunflower in an amount that satisfies the directive from the SPP.
Okay, that answers the question I had, but because when we had the hearing from the SPP, I was under the impression that they manipulated it all there from one central location, but it sounds like Sunflower and any other individual generating G&Ts would do the actual dispatching.
Yes, the transmission owner is actually the entity that is responsible for executing the order to shed load given by the SPP. Okay,
thank you, Stuart. Senator Francisco?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And Stuart, I also have a question for you. I was really pleased to hear that you had foresight and already had those load shedding blocks identified. You referred to the 30 to 60 minute basis. And so my question was, Sunflower Electric Power able to limit the time off or without power to that 30 to 60 minutes? I know for some utilities it was not, and there were people that went 3.5 hours. We heard a lot about that 30 to 60 minutes. How did that work in the case of Sunflower Electric?
Yeah, the 30 to 60 minutes is kind of the objective when you're in a load shedding situation, but I do think that there are operational issues that can come up in the process of shedding load where, for example, when you're trying to close a circuit back in, sometimes it's a mechanical operation, sometimes it doesn't work. You have to send somebody out into the field to do it. Sometimes just the system configuration is such that you're not able to get a circuit back on in that 30 to 60 minute time frame. So there are a number of variables, and I think in Sunflower's case, there may have been a few instances where the actual outage time exceeded 60 minutes, but I don't think it was very many of them.
So I'm pleased to hear that you were able to make that happen in a lot of cases. And I know that was an important, it was a message that was getting out to the public about how long this might last. So as much as possible, if we can work to make that happen, would give reassurance to our customers. So.
Leslie Kaufman, go ahead.
Mr. Chairman, Leslie Kaufman, KEC. I would share, if it's of interest to you, Mr. Chairman, and the committee, most of western Kansas is a participant with the GNT that Stewart represents, Sunflower Electric. Eastern Kansas, the eastern part of the state, cooperatives there get their power through KEPCO, and they buy a lot of their power through Evergy's system. Actually, Connie's co-op actually was part of that load shedding. I don't know if you would like to hear from the distribution co-op perspective on the other side of the state, if that gets to some of the questions you're asking, but I believe she'd be willing if you would like, Chairman. Absolutely. So.
It'd be good to hear from that. Yeah, Connie.
Connie Adams, Sumner Cali Electric. So yes, we are a KEPCO provided cooperative. Our power actually comes from Evergy. So when we were notified that they went to the level 3, some of the outages that we experienced for our members was closer to 2 hours and 42 minutes. So it was much longer than that. You know, one of the members that I spoke with, you know, and you can't help but to feel their frustration and have empathy for their situation because they're choring. You know, it's calving season. You know, I have several dairies on my line that, you know, we're trying to milk their cows for the day. In today's day and age, you know, the beauty of that is you get to do that with electricity now. And so, you know, it was a very big hardship for them, but our outages were much longer in duration than that. So from a distribution standpoint, for you to see that, you know, not that you want to point the finger, not that you want to, you know, and I'm sure that, you know, we all go through situations like this and we say, what did we do today that we can do better tomorrow? And I think there will be a lot of those conversations that will be had.
Any other questions? So basically, I mean, there's a huge difference between the east and the western part of the state because of how the base load, I guess, is set up. You buy from Evergy. Stewart's out there, does the generation from Sunflower. I guess in these type situations, was the biggest problem the gas flow, because you had all this extra peak load issue that came up? I don't know if Stewart could answer that, or.
Yes, Mr. Chairman. Stuart Lowry, Sunflower Electric. It's hard to point to one and only one reason for the events of last week. Certainly, the cold weather had a dramatic impact on the demand for natural gas. The cold weather also had an impact on the production of natural gas. And we were operating gas generation last week to meet the electric load. And in some cases, we were having a very difficult time getting gas supply to run that generation. So, you know, if I were to point to a root cause of last week's event, the root cause would be the cold weather. The cold weather caused a number of secondary issues that also presented both operational challenges and ultimately will result in financial challenges as we sort out the market settlements and start sending out customer bills.
So if I hear you right, maybe Leslie or Connie can chime in. you anticipate it's going to be a little while before this is all resolved. And I don't know if you have a time frame in mind, and are you expecting that you're going to have to amortize this out over time, this huge spike?
Yeah, that would be, Stuart Lowry again, that would be my expectation, Mr. Chairman. I think the KCC has taken action indicating that they're going to be working with their regulated utilities to set up a regulatory asset and amortize the costs over an appropriate period of time. Even the unregulated electric cooperatives would take a similar approach to this challenge.
So I get one last question following up with that. You know, do you anticipate giving customers some kind of an idea of what their, you know, what the time frame's going to be, and you know what kind of hit they're going to take, or any mitigating things that they can do? You know, particularly people on fixed incomes and you know things like that.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that every cooperative has a customer makeup that's a little bit unique, and every one of the cooperatives is going to have to understand their customer base and how their customer base can best navigate what the charges might be. But the amount owed is going to be communicated, and the plan for the recovery of those amounts will also be communicated. And, you know, with an electric cooperative, there's lots of opportunity for input into that process. And certainly the folks that are on fixed income, this is going to be a challenging event. We know that. We're not going to want to set people up to fail. We're going to want to work with people to come up with a solution where we can all succeed.
Any other questions, committee? Seeing none, thank you, Stuart and Leslie and Connie. We appreciate your time today. And again, tomorrow we'll hear from the other gas folks, and also work Senate Bill 133. And with that, we are adjourned. Thank you.